Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA manufacturers race at Tokyo that was in the Group 4 cars just a few days ago. So this round was quite a strong round for McLaren. McLaren pretty decent round here. However, the 7th gear towards the end of the straight was quite weak. It was good everywhere else. It was just in the main overtaking zone right at the end of the straight, the McLaren kind of died a death. It just didn't have the grunt to get to that top speed. So it's pretty decent to stay involved with the race. We managed a very good qualifying lap. Put myself in P2. I literally did the perfect lap. There was a couple attempts left maybe in it, but we really nailed that, putting ourselves in the perfect position to finally, in the final race of the day, to maybe be able to score some good points. Now, we had some bad luck again in this round, had some poor qualifying, some okay qualifying. I think we got totally wiped out by some drivers in some of the races, but it's to be expected at this round. But the final race of the day, we have an opportunity here to finally get some solid points. Now, there is an issue with this race. You're going to see P1 in the Lamborghini. Now, P1 in that Lamborghini racing this race has got an issue, something either on his connection end or his router or something with regards to the game and his connection. He can't see other people in the race. Now, personally, I think if you know this, you shouldn't be racing. You should just you need to get that sorted because it's so dangerous. You can kind of see it straight away. When we actually bump draft him, it seems to increase his speed a little bit there, but just take a look later on when we get through to some other incidents when we're behind him, what actually happens. And there is some actual incidents involved with him with another driver, so just check that out as we go through the race. So following down in P2, started in P2, still in P2. So turn 1 has been okay. Finally we got through turn 1, no issues from cars behind, pretty well driven by the looks of it, looking in the mirror, although you can't see everything going on, but it looks okay as we're now following in the slipstream of the Lamborghini. Obviously the Lamborghini was probably the best car for this track in terms of overall speed and top speed as well. It's got an insanely high final gear speed in the 7th gear. It can just keep accelerating, especially when in a slipstream. It's very hard to get behind. Also the Mercedes, extremely strong in that final gear with the gearing that it's got. Now the McLaren, you can see, very strong through this sector. It's strong everywhere. It's just at the end of the straight, which you'll see throughout this video, you can see the 7th gear did start struggling. Now throughout some of the other races, I decided I wasn't going to do bump drafting because in I think the first 3 races we didn't do it because I wanted to try and do it without that. However, it was pretty clear that everyone else was doing it, and the McLaren really did need to do it because it just couldn't overtake. As soon as you pulled out of a slipstream, they just did not have the power to get past anyone, so we had to really resort to doing it in the final 2 races. And in this final race, you can see getting a very good exit off that final corner on lap 1. We're now going to go down and hopefully get right behind the Lamborghini. You're going to see what I'm talking about with regards to the fact that on his screen there's no other cars involved with this race, so the physics that he receives from the game is based on what's on his screen. So if I bump draft him here now, you'll have a little look, we're going to basically just stop dead behind him. It's not actually going to increase his speed. So watch this. It was confusing at first, but it kind of worked out through the race. We see we hit him, nothing happens. Now this is because he cannot see anyone else on his screen. There is no other cars, I believe. It's just him racing around on his own, as far as I can tell, which is a massive issue if someone goes for an overtake, because you can still hit him, but he does not get affected by it, I believe. That is as far as I know. There must be something to do with router settings or internet settings is causing this issue for him, and I think he's going to have to get it sorted if he wants to take part in these races, because it's going to cause a lot of issues. I did see some stuff on Twitter in other races where he wiped a few drivers out, not by being deliberate, just by mistake, because it's just what's happened with the fact that you can't see anyone. As we skip ahead, you can see now to the end of lap 2, and again we're going to follow behind and try and bump draft him down straight, and just to see if it, at first I wanted to see if it was just a glitch or something, but you can see again, nothing. It is just 100% dead when you go into the back, and so I tried to go past him on the straight, and you can see it now. At this point though, we haven't got the speed because we've obviously just used up that by hitting the rear of the Lamborghini, but the Mercedes behind us has got the top speed, especially once it gets going. You can see it just keeps accelerating. So we're going to get into the slipstream of the Mercedes, although you can see straight away that Lamborghini kind of pushing him over, and I could see as I was looking, you can see my eyes, I was actually ready for something to happen here as we go into this corner. You can see straight away Lamborghini turns in, doesn't know he's there, crushes him into the wall, and this is the issue that we were talking about. it's something that is going to cause a lot of issues in the race if you cannot see another driver, and it's not fair on the other drivers, I believe. So hopefully he's going to get that issue sorted so he can race without taking people out, because I did see it on Twitter, a few other drivers that had similar incidents as this, what we've just seen there. As we now skip ahead to lap 5, we've been racing this race very cautiously after what I'd just seen, because I did not want this final race to end in something like a wipeout on the wall or something like that. So you can see get very close as we get hit from behind. I think that's by the Ferrari in the braking zone. Probably just misjudged his braking with the slipstream. No harm done. We managed to stay on track luckily, and no penalties either way with this new current penalty. I think this was with the new penalty system. I think we raced this. Was this what? I'm trying to think if this was with the new penalty system or the old penalty. I think this was actually with the old penalty system, with the system that was actually giving penalties for nothing. Yeah, it was, because in some of the other races we got absolutely rammed from behind and received, I think, a 6-second penalty because the car behind missed his braking. Now that was the problem obviously on the old penalty system, but now we're on the opposite end of the scale with regards to the penalty system. But in this race, you see in P3 still in a solid position. We're coming up to the end of lap 5. You can see just trying to stay in the slipstream, and this is 100% just all about the toe. Following cars in slipstream, this is something that I think Polyphonic do need to start considering in their physics. I think it's got a little bit crazy, the slipstream situation now. We have a situation where your slipstream's from 1.5 seconds back, which means you can afford to make so many errors and still stay in the slipstream. And another thing, it's too strong. The slipstream strength is just way too strong. They need to tone it down a little bit. It doesn't need massively toning down. It just needs a little bit of toning down, and then making the slipstream only available from about 7 tenths to 8 tenths back like it used to be, because this new 1.5 second slipstream is just the slipstream train. It's not really rewarding skillful driving. As I go for a move down that left, and you could see nearly getting crushed into the pit lane wall there because he can't see me, and at that point I was like, wow, he needs to pretty much disconnect, because he's going to end up wiping a lot of people out this race. And I think he may have realised at that point, you're going to see it in a minute, I think he decides to actually leave the race, because I think he realised it's going to be too dangerous. It's nearly wiped me out. He's already wiped one other driver out, and we're only halfway through this race, so there's potential for a lot of carnage in this race as we now follow P1 in P2 now with that disconnection, and looking like a solid, at the moment things are looking good. We've got a lot of cars behind us, so you can see in the slipstream train behind us we have at least 6 other cars involved with this battle for this final race of the day. Everyone wants the points, remember, when it comes to the final race of the day. As we look at the replay camera and just look how close this racing is, we've got a lot of cars that want to take home the bigger points in this race. Obviously the final race has less points than a lot of the other races, because you're gradually losing players throughout the night, and this is the final chance to get some points. So in a way you're going to find people being cautious, but on them last few laps people are going to get aggressive because they want them points. So this is going to be very nervous towards the end. No one wants to make a mistake, everyone trying to keep it clean. And again, the game looks amazing on these replay cameras. I really enjoy this track, if I'm honest. I like the layout. I do tend to go quite well around this track. I've had some very strong results in the past at this location, so hoping to get another strong result in Group 4 here was the main aim, obviously, because Group 4 in the McLaren is where you need to pick up the points. In the Group 3 it's not quite as strong as the Group 4, so just trying to get some solid points here. Anything over 300 and I think we would be happy. Before the day started I wanted quite a big amount of points, but with the final race now, in the final race we've got to take what we can get, as we're now picking up the slipstream from that Mercedes, working our way down the main straight. Now it's such a long straight, this is where the McLaren really did suffer, was because if the straight was about 500 yards or even more shorter it'd be okay, but you can see at this point now McLaren's dying at 160 miles per hour. That McLaren dies because its fastest, most torque range is 50% on that bar that fills up. So at this point now, the McLaren's struggling. Just look at the difference with the cars behind me, as we get a massive bump draft that puts us up to pretty much the limiter there. But there's once we come out of that slipstream, we're not going to have the speed to actually get an overtake done, and we actually lose speed once we pull out of that slipstream. That shows you why this car just can't really make an overtake, as we try and go around the outside. However, that is going to be very hard to do, going around the outside of these corners. I decided to just pretty much back off a bit, tuck back in, hold on to second and get the slipstream back from P1. So sensible driving there, just trying to make sure I don't lose too much time, and we don't get involved with too many cars that are behind us, because it's really dangerous. Once you get involved with the P3, 4, 5 positions, that's when you're going to risk getting the penalties, especially with the penalty system that was being run when we did this race, as we go through the really fast flowing corners there through under the tunnel. Very dangerous zone, very easy to make a mistake. Finally, in this race, I don't think we actually made a mistake through that section, which is nice, but it is very easy to pick up a penalty or make a mistake, hit the wall, something through there, as we now see. Following this Mercedes, everything is looking okay. Tyre wear's looking good. We've got that brake bias free to the rear. Now, the only reason I did that was just to create a little bit of extra life on the front tyres. You didn't really need to worry about tyre life, if I'm brutally honest, because tyre wear was set really low. We are obviously on the really soft compound tyres. I think it was a racing soft this race, but with, I think, tyre wear set at just ×2 or ×3 or something. Tyre wear was not a massive issue, especially for McLaren. We could afford to push. I could have probably ran 1 to the rear bias, but I found that 3 to the rear was quite a nice balance. It just kept the fronts alive a little bit extra. Rear tyres was no issues in this race. The traction on McLaren is extremely strong, so don't really need to worry too much about the rear tyres. You just want to try and look after the fronts mainly. They do start going a bit the rears, but this round there was no worries with it. As we pick up that slipstream, we're going to pump draft, because like I say, if we go for an overtake, I won't get it done. We'd already tested this out in other races. As soon as we go to the right hand side, the torque of the Mercedes or the Jag or other cars just takes over and they go back past us. And McLaren just did not have the grunt in that final gear, as we get a bump draft again from the car behind there. I think that's the Jaguar, also a very fast car down the straights. It's going into the braking zone, trying to hold this middle line of the track, just in case someone goes for a dive on the inside. That means we're covering that off. And also around the outside, you're kind of covering both lines off by just holding the middle of the track there in the braking zone. Very similar to what P1 did in the braking zone. So now with 5 laps to go in this race, things are going to start getting a little bit more heated. People are going to start making moves where they want to be in the top 3 positions for the final laps. That's where you need to be, really, to give yourself the opportunity to win. Now, you don't want to be necessarily in P1 on the final corner on the final lap, because obviously with the slipstream race then down to the finishing line, you're very likely going to lose that position unless you've got a very, very fast accelerating car with a lot of torque. Then you're probably going to find that you're losing. Obviously Mercedes and Jaguar, they're good cars that could possibly fight off people if they were going to try and go for that move down the straight. But for myself, McLaren, I have to be behind, really. I cannot be in the lead, because I would get absolutely destroyed by the time we get to the finishing line. So for myself, we have to aim to be in P2 or P3 ideally and get in a slipstream. That is where we want to be as we go into the final corner. Have a little look down the outside, and then I seen the Jaguar absolutely launching it up the inside. Luckily I seen that. I don't know if he missed his brakes or it was a deliberate overtake, but I had to just let him go. There was no point turning in and causing a collision. As he puts his hazards on there, I think he just to say thank you for giving him space, because I think if I would have just turned into my normal line, which was a bit held off because we were on the left hand side of Jack's, but yeah, I had to give him the space there because he just launched it. So luckily no harm done. A good move in the end by P2, and now he's in the slipstream, as I think he's in the Aston Martin actually, is that in front of him. Not quite sure why we called that the Jaguar before, but yeah, the Aston Martin. So again, yeah, another very, very fast car in Group 4 for this track. It's got very good high top speed, so that's probably why his car is so powerful down the straight. But now we've got behind another Mercedes with that insane slipstream. The Mercedes was just incredibly strong on the slipstream down that straight, and now we're down to P4. Now this is not the best situation. I really wanted to be at least in P2 or P3. However, P4, we still can fight for this and push all the way to the end. This is going to get incredibly intense now. This is obviously the final race of the day. People are now wanting to get themselves towards the front of the grid. They're trying to get themselves in prime position for the top place in this race. Everyone wants that P1. I wasn't going to be settling for P4. I wanted the P1 as well. It's going to be very hard in the McLaren because it's not got the overall acceleration once we get in 7th gear. However, we can try our best and see what happens as we get down to that final lap, as we're now on lap 9. Just 3.5 laps to go now in this race. It's all going to start picking up. You can see that the battle for this race now is between 6 cars. I think the other group have been dropped now. You can see in the distance on the track map on the top right hand corner, it's quite a big gap. You can see it there on the replay camera as well. Quite a large gap between the top 6, but just look at this group of cars pushing all the way through this section. And obviously the good thing about these races, although I can understand why they do them sometimes with the slipstream for the cars, it creates an opportunity for the majority of cars to get a result at these tracks, because all you have to do is stay within 1.5 seconds, which isn't that hard really. In Group 4. Group 4 is quite an easy class of car to stay within the slipstream, because a little mistake and you're still going to pick up a massive draft, as we now head off down the long slipstream zone all the way over the line to start the last few laps in this race. This is going to start getting very intense. You can see I've got myself back up to P2, I think that is now in this race, with a move on that final corner, and now we've got the slipstream to P1. So will we be able to make a move anywhere on this track? I think that we're either in P2 or P3. We'll take a look as we go through to the replay camera that we can actually see cars in front. Yeah, we're in P3, so we managed to get past the Mercedes in the braking zone with quite a nice late brake into that corner, and now that Mercedes is going to try and go back around the left hand side. You can see the extra power again taking over, but we've got a bit of a slipstream from the other Mercedes, so we might be able to defend here as we go into the braking zone. I can see we're not going to get that. However, the Nissan GTR behind us gives us a nudge there in the braking zone, just about get away with it that time. A bit late on the brakes by Nissan, a little bit too eager to try and push us through there. That could easily have resulted in a penalty with the current penalty system that we were running on this game when we did this race. So yeah, luckily no one got a penalty in that situation, and now we're back down to P4 with just over 2 3/4 of a lap to go in this 12 lap race. Things are going to get heated. You can see people are getting more aggressive, people want to get to that front, and this is why I kind of, although it is really intense to be in with, it's really enjoyable to watch back when you can see everyone fighting their ways, trying to get to the front of the field. Now, do you want to be in the front? It's such a risky strategy. You can risk getting in the front and running clean and not being involved with the battling behind, or you could be like sitting back in P4 like I am and thinking we're just going to hang on here, and then when we get an opportunity to get P3, we'll go to P3, and then when we get an opportunity to go on that final lap, then we'll look for it. But you see now, I decided I want to get past this P3 again in the braking zone. We're going to try and outbrake him. The McLaren are very strong on the brakes. You can see able to brake very late, as I see the Mercedes lift off the brakes, I think they're to try and go wide, which caused him to go very wide for that corner. We're able to cut in front of him, get that P3 back, and now we're in the slipstream of that Aston Martin. And luckily for myself, I think this kind of helped that the Mercedes was so close to the rear of my car at this section, because he's going to get the slipstream. He's going to probably have to back off a bit. You can see, as you can see in the mirror, I think he's doing that, lifting off to give himself the boost up the hill. Very clever driving. That's what you pretty much need to do. There's no point trying to get past at this point, because if he pulls out the slipstream at lower speeds, he's going to have to tuck back into my slipstream. So now he's going to go for it. You can see up the hill, using the extra grunt that he's got from obviously creating that slipstream. But again, we've got the slipstream. Will we be able to fight this off slightly? He's trying to nudge us out the way of the slipstream. No way I'm moving out the way of that slipstream. That is my slipstream. We're going to hold on to this P3 for as long as possible as we go into the braking zone, almost side by side, pretty much dead level there, braking late, and then we get nudged by the Nissan GTR behind. Again, the GTR not hitting his braking zones, a little bit too aggressive, nudges into my rear, which actually causes me to nudge into the Mercedes on the left hand side. So unfortunate there, but not much we can do when we're getting hit into the braking zones. One thing you need to be careful is you've got to be bearing in mind during the slipstream. That's one thing you need to learn on this game. When you're in that slipstream, you need to account for that in your braking by braking just a fraction early as we go into this very tricky one. This is so tricky when you're following someone this closely through here. It's so easy on the view that we use to just misjudge your turning in point, not see your reference points, but luckily this time getting through there nice and easily. As again, through this section it's very hard with the size of that Aston Martin in front of us. Very difficult to see much. It's one thing, this is the disadvantage of this view, and it's probably why a lot of people do actually use the roof view, as I call it, because it's so high up. I'm not really a fan of it personally, but a lot of people probably use that because you get much more visibility when running close to another car. But now, following this Aston Martin, we're going to go over to the right side and try and late brake into this final corner again. Can we go for it? We're on the inside, we brake late, very late, down into first gear, trying to hold a tight apex. However, we're running a little bit wide through there. We're going to have to tuck back into the Aston Martin slipstream. Luckily didn't lose any other positions there as we now start onto the final lap of this race. This is where things are going to get extremely intense. Everyone's going to want to be fighting for the win in this race. Getting into that 7th gear nice and early to get the maximum speed in this early zone. However, you're going to see, this is what I'm talking about with the McLaren. Look at this now. Watch that Mercedes, how far back it is. He's well in the mirror there, but because of the 6th gear on that Mercedes being so strong, he's going to have a massive slipstream all the way down the straight. And he's actually going to get the slipstream when he pulls. Is he going to? No, he's not going to get it when he pulls out of the slipstream. We're getting quite a nice draft up the straight there. Obviously, P1 all the way up to that zone didn't have any slipstream, and now he's in P2. As the Mercedes goes flying down our left-hand side, not much we can really do to defend that. We're going to try braking very late. 2 cars going side by side at front, myself and P4 going side by side. Then again, the GTR rams us in the rear again for I think about the 4th time in the race, which then again causes me to bump into Mercedes. So Nissan GTR driver just needs to just be a bit more careful there in the braking zones. And I think that's 4th time in this race that we've actually been hit in the rear by the GTR. It's nearly caused an incident, especially with the current penalty system we were running. It was very dangerous to be doing stuff like that, but luckily no one received the penalty, so thankfully the game was being nice to me today on this final race. It didn't go quite nice in the other races, but this race it was being nice and we didn't receive any penalties for that type of stuff. But now we're in a good position because now we're in the battle now for the podium. It looks like the other cars in this race, P4, 5 and 6, etc., have dropped off far too much now to be competing on the final stretch of road. So all we've got to do now is stay close to the slipstream, get our car in the perfect position to go for the win on that final stretch of road. So you can see, getting the car into a nice slipstream zone, that is really important. And then in the final corner, we want to brake really late and hold a very tight line and really get on the power as early as possible to get ourselves as close as possible. You can see, looking at them battling, I was trying to think, which line do I do? I'm going to brake late and then downshift into first and hold a very tight line, you can see there. And then early on the front, almost drifting through the final corner. This is going to be an incredibly close finish. You can see they're going side by side. This is ideal for me now because neither one of them are getting the slipstream, so they're drag racing down to the finish. I'm going to get the slipstream early, shifting into 7th gear, you can see here, to really get that slipstream working, and now we're getting the boost of that slipstream. This is where the McLaren is really strong at this type of point, and we're going to try and go down the middle, but he's going to block that off. We're going to try and go around the outside. How close will this be as we go over the line? We just about get ourselves into P2, but look how close that was between P1, 2 and 3. Incredible race, thoroughly enjoyed that. Nearly got the win in the race. It would have been incredible if we could have took that win, but we come away with a P2. Just look how close that was at the finishing line. Absolutely amazing racing in GT Sport. So thoroughly happy in a way. We come away with, I think, 316 points, is it? Let's have a little look. Yeah, 316 points. Finally, in the final race, we managed to get the points that we wanted. Just look at that. Absolutely incredible race. 3 cars nearly taking the win. Each one of them cars could have had the win in this race, so really enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed this video as well. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button on screen at the moment, and make sure you hit that notification button so you don't miss any future videos or streams. I will see you all very soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone.